Well, I think we can kind of get get started into it though if we're all ready.
Yeah, as ready as I'll ever be.
Yeah. All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bad Dependencies. I'm joined here with Charlie Eriksen, research extraordinaire, as usual, but we also have a very special guest. So, Josh, thanks so much for joining us here today, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, some people may have been living under a rock. I don't know why they've ended up on this podcast, but just in case they have no context, on Monday, a gigantic kind of supply chain attack happened involving multiple packages with a total of around in the billions of weekly downloads. You were the maintainer whose account got compromised with that. I guess we just start at the beginning. It's probably the most logical place to start. What actually happened there? How did your account get compromised? What happened on that kind of Monday?
Yeah, I mean, it was, for me, it was morning, and I had a doctor's appointment that I was getting ready for. And the week had been stressful because of work. We're going live with a customer of ours right now, and so everything's in like final preparations. People are running around trying to make sure everything's getting done. And yeah, it was just I just had a list of things to do and needed to get them done, and was getting ready and saw this email come across my inbox because I check my emails at random times throughout the day, and that was one of them. And decided, okay, I'll just get some stuff done. And one of them was an email coming from what I thought to be NPM, saying, "Hey, we're, in my head it was we're changing our credentials or something about our security system, and we just need you to reset your 2FA credentials so that." In my head, it was like new key scheme or something. I didn't know. I didn't really care. I just needed to get it done. And it was urgent, which is, of course, a hallmark of these sorts of things, but not too urgent. It wasn't urgent enough for me to like really think this would be uncharacteristic of NPM. NPM's done weird things in the past. So anyway, along with all of these different, visual things, I just wasn't thinking. Nothing really stood out to me. And I clicked on the link in the email. Again, mistake number 2. And signed in thinking, yeah, okay, I'll just do this real quick. Username, password, timed one-time password, and the rest was history. I got a couple emails saying my token had been reset. Immediately, there's like 4 emails saying it had been reset, which I thought was weird. Should have triggered some more red flags in my head, but I was like, also NPM has been buggy in the past. So this is pretty par for the course so far for NPM. I didn't even notice the .help. I probably looked at it and I don't know. It didn't strike me as odd. Went to my doctor's appointment, was a couple hours out of contact, came home. And about after that, an hour after that, is when I got Charlie's message showing up for me on my phone on Blue Sky. And I remember kind of like my phone being at an angle and thinking, Blue Sky notification. That's weird. I never get any Blue Sky notifications. And it says the word compromised on it or something like this. And I was just like, this can't be good. So I opened it up and saw it. My initial gut reaction was like, is this just like another, I get a lot of security vulnerability reports for certain packages that aren't, I don't know, arguably not really security vulnerability reports. Some people thinking that it should be doing something it doesn't and whatnot. And so I was like, this must be one of those. And then I really read the message and realized this is something else. And it did immediately dawn on me that the email situation that morning was what it was. Like that was the attack. And yeah, just immediately went into like chaos control mode at that point. I knew what was going to happen next. I knew it was going to be big news almost immediately. So I started mentally preparing myself, contacting the people I needed to contact, and everything after that is just the cleanup of it. I mean, it was done in an instant. Yeah, that's basically it. It was the right time, perfect storm sort of situation for me personally, where it was like, I was not in a place where I should have been doing anything security related, of course, but I was also in a spot where I had to get something done. I had to get something done that morning. I was feeling productive, ready to go, in a rush. This is never the right time to be doing this stuff, and it just happened to come across my screen, and that was that.
Yeah, it's always going to happen like this. When people tell you the stories of being compromised or being scammed or whatever, it is always a combination of things that under normal circumstances like wouldn't have had that effect. But yeah, it happened. There's a couple of misconceptions going around on the internet that I kind of want to clarify with you. One is that there was kind of a lot of chatter that in order for this to have happened, you wouldn't have had MFA, multi-factor authentication, on your account. So firstly, like, is that true? And secondly, how then did the attackers bypass MFA if they were able to?
Yeah, so no, there was definitely MFA as required. I don't remember if NPM required at one point, but it has been on for years and years and years. In fact, Cinder, who's a co-maintainer of Chalk, also requires it on the org. I also require it on some of my orgs. Like, it's just always been on. So that was definitely on. The problem is that timed one-time passwords are not phishing resistant. They can be man in the middle. They're just a few numbers, right? And there's no cryptographic checks. There's no domain association, nothing like this, like, universal two-factor would have. And yeah, I mean, I should have had universal two-factor. That's probably the biggest technical failure on this whole thing. Like, that should have been set up a while back. But that's how it happened, was that it was still on TOTP. And I haven't been super active in the Node.js community. Anybody who is active in the Node.js community has probably noticed this. For the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years at this point. I don't necessarily build new things for Node. I'm not as active as I used to be. And so it just was never anything that was on. I wasn't publishing packages. I wasn't logging in. It was just never kind of on my list, and I just let it lapse. And it obviously came back to bite me.
Yeah. Charlie, I kind of want to ask you a question now from your perspective, because we kind of know now that from Josh's side that yes, he was phished and how that happened. What did you see from your side? And I guess what was the moment that you realized that this was going to be big?
Yeah, so it was around like 2 or 3 p.m. and I was going through our triage queue of packages where our system had detected something, potentially malicious, but it wasn't quite sure enough whether or not it was something real. And first I saw the debug package and I was like, ooh, I know this one, right? Most of my projects have it. Then I saw Chalk and EX, and I think I started posting in our internal Slack, like, oh yeah, this one is compromised, this one is compromised. And then I was like, okay, get going. And started figuring out like, okay, right, because at that point I knew that a significant portion of projects in the JavaScript ecosystem will be impacted. Trying to figure out how to get hold of Josh to let him know and drum up our social media, right? Because one of the things that's really important is like make sure that people stop doing things. It's so easy to do npm install and suddenly, because you haven't fixed the version, you're compromised. And at this point, I hadn't taken the time to reverse engineer the package. But once I kind of had sent a message out, done a couple of tweets, I started looking and it's like, oh yeah, so there was those 3 packages and then 14 more. Like, oh, this is going to be a long day. And it's been a long week now, right? It's,
yeah, I mean,
I was lucky enough that
that was my like first reaction was like, oh, this is my first thought was this is going to be number 1 on Hacker News in like just a few minutes, whenever this breaks. So yeah, I was in a very similar boat. I still haven't, like, I have looked at other like breaches and things in the past that were not mine, I might add, but that were like malware payloads and things. And I like looking at those and looking at them. I have not even been able to sit down and look at it myself this time. All of my information about the actual malware payload has been through third-party articles, like going through it themselves, like, because it's just been so time consuming. So I can very much relate to that.
Yeah. we'll get back to the social media part too, because there's been a little bit of criticism on me from some people about my post, which we'll get to. Some of it's kind of fair, I gotta admit. I guess something I want to ask you, Josh, is what has kind of the general response been from the community in general? Obviously, this is unfortunate, but how have people kind of reacted to this, and I guess kind of reacted to you in a way?
Yeah, I mean, outpouring of support. I feel like you always hear this and it's kind of cliche, like, thanks for all the support, but it was really bizarre to be on the other end of that instead of being like a bystander. The support was so incredibly like overwhelming that it made the whole thing a lot easier. Like, people were posting like, I would have fallen for this too. Like, it happens to anyone. It can happen to anyone. Like, it's fine. And, I have mixed reactions to some of that, but for the most part, things were so positive that it truly shocked me. And this was before like the wave of like news outlets starting to disseminate it even further. It was just in like the core, like the immediate places where I expected it to be. Obviously Blue Sky, because that's kind of where things broke a little bit, like broke the news a bit. But also like Hacker News was like the first place I expected it to show up. And of course there were tons of people on there that were super nice. Friends starting to reach out. LinkedIn went crazy. And people were very nice on there. I mean, it was very positive and very understanding. And I felt immediately that I had to kind of respond to that. And be transparent. That was already the case, but it helped me be more transparent and vulnerable and like talking about things. It helped me feel like that was okay. So it was really important to me that happened. I think if it had been really, really negative, it would have made things exponentially harder to get through. Yeah.
And what advice would you give kind of other maintainers, or maybe people getting into the open source? Like, do you have any takeaways from this experience that if this was to happen to someone else, or, if you could redo Monday, which I'm sure you do not want to do, but what advice would you have? What changes would you make in this situation?
I mean, don't get phished. That's a good one.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. Like prevent it from happening. I mean, the criticism, the small amount of criticism now, there's a lot more that it's reached a bigger audience, which it doesn't bother me so much. But the immediate criticism on like the security and technical level, it sucks to hear it, I think, especially when it's like it's criticizing you as a person and decisions that you've made and whatnot. But take it, like it's usually coming from a good spot. You have to remember that not everyone on the internet is trying to be mean, even if it hurts your feelings. That's a lesson you learn in open source pretty early on. Whether it be through like language barriers or something like this, there's going to be messages that just sound rude. And the thing is that like arguing from like a purely factual standpoint, they're all right. Like most of them are right. There's some criticism that wasn't, but, I do know security pretty well. I feel like I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert, but I take pride in knowing a lot about how to secure open. I mean, I have a 15-year track record on this. Some people forgot that or don't realize that, and that's fine. But a lot of the criticism was totally warranted. And to take that with stride is really important, and to be like, yeah, you're right. I think made a huge difference in the sort of general response. I know it was pointed out quite a few times that the vulnerability was appreciated, and I think I knew that beforehand. I've had a few cases in open source where I've messed up myself, not security wise, but just being transparent and honest and immediate really saved a lot of people's headaches and time and money, and it's always appreciated. So keep doing that. Like, if you screw up, own it. That's a big thing in open source, I think.
I think a lot of people really appreciated what you did there, and yeah, you were very responsive to everyone, and not just with researchers like Charlie, but to the internet, letting everyone know. So I think that goes a long way. I do want to ask go for it, Charlie.
Yeah, just one piece of meta commentary, right? Because I think something that stands out to me as being really important in what you're saying is this idea of vulnerability. right, in this industry, right, vulnerability is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But open source is so built on trust. And I think if there's one thing I've learned over the last number of years, it is that trust requires vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I totally agree with this. And some of the best responses I've seen from other maintainers who have made mistakes or have done something weird is like just starting out with like, I'm sorry. It goes a long way. It really goes a long way.
So I have a question here. I kind of asked you if it was okay to kind of ask these types of questions, but something in the open source community that's really talked about, but anyone inside it knows it's a big deal. That's kind of mental health. I don't think people understand the toll that it takes to maintain open source packages. I've never done it, so I can't kind of begin to kind of comprehend what it's like to have, and in your case, mostly internet kind of relying on you at some point. So I guess first question is, how are you doing now? And if you're kind of feeling okay with everything, and then I'll kind of follow up with maybe some questions of how we can solve this in the future. But how are you doing now? Are you doing okay dealing with this? It's been a big week.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the day of, I was actually like in full autopilot. Like zero emotion, was just trying to clean up my mess. Like that was the one mode of operation that day. And so I didn't have time to really think about the emotional aspects of it so much, or to even process internally what it was. It was, I have a task and that I need to get that task done. And it is the most urgent thing in my life right now. That was Monday. Once I got my account back that afternoon or that evening, it was like, okay, I can flip the switch off, and now I can just lay in bed and stare at the ceiling and think about what just happened. And the one thing that I kept thinking was, this could have been way worse. Like that rung in my head. I like WannaCry, Heartbleed, Geotan, the XZ stuff. I am familiar with all of that. I researched the Geotan thing. Like I can't imagine, if they were not greedy and really greedy at that, and instead were evil, how bad this could have been. That's what was playing through my head. Yeah, it sucked to think that I caused like headaches for a lot of people. I get that, and it doesn't feel good. But the one thing was, like, people could have gotten hurt from this. Yeah, it's JavaScript, it's NPM, it's, making React apps, but people do use it in places arguably they shouldn't, or are critical, and I know that my stuff does permeate into those places, and this could have hurt someone, and that's the kind of the macabre part of it that really stuck with me that night. And the next day was just embarrassment. Like, it was embarrassment all day. I didn't want to show my face. I didn't want to go outside, and
didn't want to do a podcast with two random people.
I was so vulnerable yesterday, and now I just feel like, was I too vulnerable? Am I like, giving too much up, or, and I finally, it took a day to process. I feel like I did a good job processing it, and now I'm mostly okay. Like I'm still getting used to being forced into the spotlight in such a way. I mean, like, Primogean just posted a video that had my face in it, or, like, that's people that I know of in the tech sphere talking about me, coming across my subscription feed. That's probably the weirder part. That's going to take some getting used to. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned the Geotan thing from XE to Liz, because I feel a lot of that, in terms of how they took over that account, was like social engineering, like leaning on maintainers and leaning on the kind of the mental health issues of maintainers, because at some point the maintainer of that just gave up, right? And said, fine, you have it if you think you can do a better job. What can we do better in the industry to kind of help resolve this? I guess, like, partly in a crisis, like, what could have people had done in the crisis to help? And I guess in general, what can we do to kind of help support the maintainers of this? Because, like it or not, the whole internet is being held up by people like you, who often don't like the spotlight, and just feel a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I knew the answer to that, a lot would be solved. I think there's, it's a really difficult question to answer. I think there's, Maybe I can explain kind of a little bit more about how I got into this a little bit, like not how I got into the situation where I have 2.6 billion, whatever, a week or month or whatever it is. I personally don't even know. I mean, like I started this 10 years ago and it was just fun. Like it wasn't meant to be enterprise grade, you know, Cloudflare workers, you know, crazy high performance, nothing like this. It was like I was doing this for fun. And then those packages started growing and growing and growing and in terms of use, and they started getting used in more places, probably places they shouldn't have been. Some of those packages should never exist. I'll be the first to admit. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and your tiny little package that moved array values around is used by 55,000 people and has 300 million downloads a week. And you never asked for this. Like you didn't want that to be the case. This wasn't social media. It wasn't a game. It wasn't something that you were trying to grow. It wasn't a business. It was something you wrote probably half awake several years before, and now half the world depends on it. There is very little you can do to prepare for that, I think. I think saying no and learning to kind of have the boundaries set for the people who use your code is really important, especially on debug. I have gotten some of the most bizarre, rude, pushy, entitled comments on that particular repo that more than anything else on GitHub. And I kind of have to put my foot down on some of it and to learn to be like that and not a people pleaser. Especially, I think there's kind of a lot of maintainers who are not people to begin with. Like they're not people persons, you know? And learning that if you're going to be maintaining big stuff is really important. And it doesn't mean that you should have to learn this. It doesn't mean it's fair, but I think saying no to people on the internet is something that's important for yourself. You have to set the boundaries on even on GitHub, which is typically a pretty friendly place. But sometimes, you know, saying I'm not going to do this is totally valid. Saying no to a PR is totally valid. And more maintainers should learn this, I think.
Definitely. Charlie, I'm hijacking a bit. Do you want to ask something in there before I continue on?
No, so actually one of the things I was curious about is how you got into this, because it occurs to me that, right, I think some people think that people get into open source for the karma of it, right, of trying to contribute, and sure, there's plenty of those people out there, but, right, when I tried to message you, right, you were difficult to find. You had blue sky, and that was basically it.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, oh, yeah, this is not one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was never for the karma because there was no karma back then. I mean, I started programming when I was 9, learning PHP very early, and then C# and Liberty Basic all kind of at the same time, or maybe over the course of a couple of years. I don't remember. And then around 16 or 17, I found, so that was like 15 years ago, I found GitHub, I think, and signed up and was a lurker for a couple of years. And then one of the things I was really interested at the time were like terminals and TTY sessions, and colors in the terminal was a really big one for me. And because I had wanted to make an MMO for the longest time and was always like trying to make cool servers and never making any progress, obviously, but I was more concerned about making the server software for this MMO really pretty. And so having colors in the terminal and all that stuff. So I knew a lot about that. And I also knew JavaScript from knowing web browsers, and knew, was learning C and doing all this stuff with the server, for the system and programming and all that. And then when Node.js came out, it was like marrying the two. And that was really exciting. And that was really, really cool. And this was back when Joyent still had it. This was still, I think, pre-10 Node.js. I mean, this was really, really early. NPM was around, if I recall correctly. And so, like, this was like a whole Wild West new world. And I found Chalk and Cinder working on this. And there were a number of other maintainers in open source that were, you know, kind of household names in that community. We were kind of tight-knit at the point. And I kind of started just talking to them and interacting with their repositories. And at some point, I don't remember exactly when, And Cinder said, hey, you've contributed to Chalk quite a bit. Would you like to join? And I said, sure. And so he made me maintainer. And then ever since then, I was like, okay, I can actually do something cool that people like working on, or like using, and I find interesting, and that not everybody wants to deal with. That's cool. I feel useful doing this. And so I just continued and continued and continued. And now we're here. That's kind of the start of it.
I hope that it doesn't discourage you from continuing to continue in this, because I think a whole bunch more people appreciate you than anything else. I have some questions now to kind of get into. You mentioned before in some of your answers, this could have been much worse. This could have been, there was some narratives on the internet, a couple that have kind of said, some that are saying that this is kind of just a big nothing burger, because in the end, I haven't checked recently, but around about $900 was actually stolen from the attackers in this point. So not a whole lot happened. There was a whole bunch of people saying that, so this is irrelevant and it shouldn't be getting the attention it does. Some of that was kind of directed at me, who made a very big attention-grabbing LinkedIn post that was criticized by a few people, John Hammond including, which is kind of funny. I kind of agree with it. But so like, how could this have been worse? Was this a big nothing burger? Yeah, and kind of like from your perspective, what would have been a worst case scenario in this? And could we have got there? Could we have had a worst case scenario?
I mean, yeah, it definitely could have been worse. There was an article posted not so long after that, entitled "We Dodged a Bullet," and that was the exact phrase that came to my head once I started to really process what was happening. Because you have to remember that the first couple of hours of the attack, I didn't know what the payload did. I don't think many people did. It was kind of a developing thing. So in my head, it's deleting everyone's stuff, ransomware, trying to steal cryptocurrency wallets or secrets, or AWS credentials, or, whatever. Like that's what it could have been easily. The fact that it only worked in the browser, as far as I know, is a miracle, because these packages are kind of usable in the browser, but that's not usually how people use them, especially not Chalk, even though it does technically work in the browser. It was still people installing it, like a ton. And yes, people did install it. Like it was there. It was on people's laptops. It was on people's computers. It was on people's servers. It was in people's CI/CD pipelines. It was there. And it could have done anything. And it was being run. It was being executed. Because otherwise we wouldn't have gotten the missing fetch error messages, right? So it ran on real machines. I would assume enterprise machines, personal machines, small businesses. It ran everywhere. And the fact that it didn't do anything was the bullet we dodged. Like, it had to have been bundled into a web app and then opened up in a browser for somebody who just had the right things installed. And
yeah. So I mean, an interesting postmortem. Wiz did a postmortem on this. Probably one of the better ones that I've seen kind of since then. And what they were able to see is that they found the malware in 10% of cloud environments. And I mean, one take from a prominent security influencer was that this should be a celebration because today we saw security working. And the fact, and my kind of response to that is, I don't think when 10% of the internet is infected by malware, we see security working so much. So I do kind of agree with you there.
Yeah, I don't agree with that statement personally. I don't think this was a celebration. This was a near miss or a near hit, or I don't know how that term works. It could have been worse. And we are lucky not, this was not a success on my part that this wasn't worse. That's not a thing to celebrate. This is a wake-up call, not a celebration.
Yeah. And I do want to defend myself a little bit here because I feel like they said, because you mentioned this before. When I posted on LinkedIn, John Hammond did a hilarious video where he looks at my LinkedIn post and he kind of like makes fun of it because, look, there's a couple of fair criticisms in there. It's like, I have urgent up the top and I can't write, but and I have this here, and the post is very much, hoping to go viral. But at the time that I wrote that, I didn't know what the malware did. We knew it was going to steal crypto, but we didn't know what else it was. It could have been dodgy dependencies, so I was trying to get out there. The fair criticism of that, though, is that there's an image in my LinkedIn post where I have like one of the packages and I have hacked written all over it. And that doesn't add any value. I was doing that because I wanted to go viral. So yeah, that's a fair point, but also,
I mean,
at the time,
I've seen weirder things happening so far. Like it's I think the fanfare of it all, I think people saw the 2.6 billion and was just like, this is crazy. Like we have to run with this. And that's kind of where it went.
I legitimately thought that on Monday the internet was going to die. I thought that was it. It's all over. I need to learn how to write with a pen and paper again. But I'm glad I did it.
And to be fair, right? So you quoted the post saying 10% of Wix's cloud environments had one of the malicious files, right? They also stated that 99% of the cloud environments used one of the packages, right? So the penetration of these packages in the world, right? Wix gives a very good coverage of the ecosystem. That's an impressive number.
I have not heard that. That's a crazy number.
Yeah. How does it feel to kind of have 99% of cloud environment standing on your shoulders at this point?
That's definitely a number. That's definitely a number. Even with like the 2.6 billion thing that keeps floating around, I truly have no idea, and I have stopped being able to comprehend some of these numbers. Like to me, it's just a repository on my account. It's the fact that people use it so heavily is cool. I'm glad they find use out of it, but the numbers and the scale at which it has gotten, it's lost on me at this. It's not lost on me from like a practical standpoint. Obviously, in this case, like I knew it was going to be a big deal, but I can't look at those numbers and think, that's similar to this. Like it's a bizarre concept that doesn't even register in my head.
Yeah, for sure. I asked some of my friends if they'd like to ask you any questions, and this one is from Remy over at Wiz, and one of the things he wanted to know is are there ecosystem level changes that you would like to see made across some of these platforms like NPM, like GitHub, and those types of areas? Are there kind of structural changes that you would like to see change that could help prevent this from other maintainers in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge process breakdown during this attack with NPM. They were extremely slow to respond, and I'm not trying to criticize any specific person, but like when NPM was still small before all the acquisitions happened, like they got back to you immediately. You had a personal relationship with these people. I went to the office. I got socks. I met Isaac. You meet these people. You know them. You kind of know their antics. They're willing to reach out and respond to you. They feel like they're part of the community. And then since then, as things have kind of progressed, it feels kind of like you're screaming at a brick wall. I had to send several messages to them saying, are there any updates? Because it's been an hour and I still am sitting here, twiddling my thumbs. I can't do anything about this. I can't do anything productive about this other than to just talk to people and talk people down. And yeah, there's certainly a process there that could be optimized somewhere. If I had access to the accounts, I know that perhaps there's some reason why they couldn't do it, investigative reasons and whatnot, regulatory, maybe authorities. I truly have no idea, but there was no transparency. I had no access to even like handle this myself. Like there was nothing there. There was no preemptive, hey, switch to U2F, which they should have been doing. There's like, hey, your downloads are wild, out of this world. You should be using something that's phishing proof. It should have been on me. Obviously, the onus was on me, but of course, NPM should have also been sending this out to people and enforcing that a bit more, And I would imagine they probably will after this. But
yeah, I mean, it was something like this that started them to go to enforce MFA on popular accounts in the first place. So hopefully it will change something,
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think I think it was just it was preventable, and it was preventable both obviously from a personal standpoint, but from a technical standpoint. And a number of people could have said, "Hey, like maybe we should revise this."
Yeah. Well, one thing that we haven't touched on there is yeah, you didn't have access to your account, so it's not so you. How long did it take you to get access back to it, and why? How are they able to lock you out of your account?
So they took. I mean, once they had the login and TOTP code, they basically were me on the account. There was no other guardrail. I believe, and I don't know for sure, but Cinder had mentioned that if they were to change the email on the account, you'd have to confirm it through the old email. I don't know if that's true, but there's even a question of whether or not they had actually changed the email on the account, because I couldn't log in. Like they had obviously changed something, password or something, where I wasn't able to log in. I think maybe it was the TOTP codes that were changed first, but they did everything they could to lock me out of it. The password reset button didn't work. I got 0 emails throughout this entire thing. Password reset did nothing. So even if the email was still the same on the account, which I still kind of believe it was, reset password wasn't working. Whether or not it was broken or they had somehow locked me out, I don't know. But there was no recourse for it other than to contact NPM through their public non-authenticated like help form, by the way, because the only way to get an actual support ticket in like I suppose in like the normal way is to log it, which can't do that. So yeah, I mean it was immediate. I couldn't log back in. I assume I tried a couple hours later and was totally locked out, and there was no recourse until about 11 p.m. that night. Almost 12 hours of being locked out of the account. Maybe 9 of them I was actually aware of that. So 8 or 9 of them or something like this. So it was a long process to get it back.
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah, big things. Charlie, do you have anything over your side?
Yeah. So in terms of like sort of controls of things that could have prevented this, I think one of the things that people will often mention as a defense mechanism against this could be the use of things like attestation and provenance, right? Having bills only be able to go into NPM through GitHub, right? Which is good in practice, right? It takes a lot of setup. And what I'm really curious about, so from your perspective, right, you have a lot of different packages, and that would require an investment on your behalf, right? If that was actually going to be helpful. And I'm curious, like, how long would that take you? And do you think it would have helped?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of length of like how much effort it would take to set up, probably not as much as one might think. It's usually pretty quick. It's not like Cinder, who has many packages. I have a few that are really even used, and that would really need something like that or warrant something like that. Whether or not it would have helped, there were a lot of people saying this would have prevented it, this would have prevented it. There were a couple of technical things that would have prevented it. Package signing is not one of them, I don't think, depending on how NPM had implemented it, because they had access to the account to change public keys on the account. At that point, they had completely reset 2-factor authentication. And so even if they had to relog or reauth, they had everything they needed to do that. So they could have changed the public key on that to their own private key, signed whatever package release, and pushed it, and it would have bypassed that entirely. Pushing straight from GitHub would have prevented it in this particular case. But the other thing to consider is that now that creates sort of like a siloed sort of, now GitHub and NPM kind of have this same security domain at that point. That's something I have to consider. I haven't even been able to look into yet. Like, what are the implications of this? If they were to compromise my GitHub, could they now not only poison the repository, which didn't happen in this attack, but now also push and publish this without me even needing any access, or to give them any access to NPM? That's also something to consider. And like, how do I mitigate this? How do I still keep this compartmentalized while I can still have some of these extra layers of security? It's a huge trade-off. It's always a huge trade-off. In these cases, it's almost never about how simple or easy it is for me to keep security on there. I don't think that's really a luxury I have anymore. But the other thing is like brash and quick decision making got me into this mess. And the last thing I want to do is go and half implement some new security layer that I don't fully think about. And so that's why some of the responses I've had have been like, I'm just not doing this right now. I'm sorry. Like I need to process this and figure out what I can add to the setup to make it more secure. Quick decisions didn't help anyone. So yeah, there are things that I could probably do, but there's also a lot of stuff missing from NPM. Like package signing would be a big one. I know they do the attestations, but I'm not entirely sure it actually solves the whole problem. It's something I have to research more, right? Yeah.
So to me, right, it also sounds like, right, actually doing it might not be that much time, but making a smart decision, because if you put out a new build that breaks things, right, that's going to be maybe even worse than what happened, right?
Yeah.
If everybody's build pipelines suddenly break.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what happened. So I didn't write Debug. I didn't create Debug. I inherited it from TJ Holloway Shook. I hope I'm saying his name right. Back when he was really big in the Node community. And the thing I learned with that one, it was already very popular at the time. It was the most popular package I ever inherited. I inherited the color ones, I inherited Debug, and I've just been maintaining them ever since. And Debug was so old that a lot of packages had the version specifier as an, so it was wildcard. So it didn't matter if I had done a breaking change, I'd still break people. And a lot of people at that. So the first release, I don't think was even until a year after I inherited the package, because I'm just not touching it. Like I just want to lock it down because I saw that everyone in that organization where it originally came from had access to this package and had publish rights to this package. And it was, I want to say 10, maybe 20 people. And so that was my big focus, was just locking it down and then doing nothing with it for a long time. And even now I'm still hesitant to do things with it because there were so many people who were broken when I did the first release, ultimately. Just waves of people broken, and I had to kind of educate about, this needs to be changed, this is outdated, etc. And so, yeah, going fast with these massive packages is just not an option.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And especially, as you say, when they've been around for such a long time, because now good practice is a bit more common. We pin versions, we do things. We kind of know what to do now better than we did 10 years ago. I flip and hope so. But yeah, so you can see that when you have something with such a legacy, that it's going to have a lot of legacy applications that are out there. Yeah, it's a perfect combination of storms. But I do think we did dodge a bullet. The internet didn't break on Monday. You're okay. It's been a probably one of the most stressful weeks of your life, if not the most stressful week of your life. But we really appreciate how human you were in your responses, that you're even willing to talk to random people like us about this for what is nearly an hour now. So, Josh, thank you so much for coming on here. We hope that it all gets better. We hope that the support continues. And